Lyre of the Lion by TheNightNinja2. Chapter 12, Past and Present. Mariano was half listening to the tale, half staring at the pendant that allowed him to both speak and understand English. He thought marrying into the Madrigals would be the closest he would ever become to having magic. The round ruby pendant set in silver filigree was a marvel of craftsmanship. He noticed Mirabel lying back on the stone ground in the sun, listening to the story of how Caspian became king of the old Narnians. And, with luck of all Narnia, Antonio was enthralled by the story. Mirabel said that the Pevensies had forgotten the Spanish she had taught them while they were here last. They had forgotten most of the things they had learnt in Narnia, but she had been allowed by Aslan to keep her knowledge and skills upon returning to the Encanto. Narnia was her home. It was easy to see that. And even without the age difference, Mariano knew she was way out of his league. They all were. Her legend had remained one of the most prominent of all Narnians, and the only one Trumpkin still believed. She was their symbol of hope that they could cling to. That one day, when all was lost, she would come dancing over the mountain to drive off the enemy with a note from her lyre, and if they needed more convincing, her bow. The dwarf believed who she was without any convincing needed. It was hard to refute who she was with the lyre in her hand and her standing there blazing like she had just walked straight out of the past with hardly any change in appearance. Sure, she was probably a tad younger, but her actions and her eyes gave away her proper age.
"Mirabel, who is this Aslan that has been referred to?"
asked Mariano in a whisper. "The great lion, the son of the great emperor beyond the sea," said Mirabel. Mariano watched with some fascination as every time the dwarf looked in Mirabel's direction, it was a near identical expression to how the young children of Encanto looked at her, like a puppy seeing its favourite person come home after a long day. Seeing the dwarf practically idolize the girl and speak to her in reverence was slightly strange, because Mirabel had always needed to fight for respect among the Madrigals. She had merged back into her role like a fish to water. After the dwarf had finished his tale about Prince Caspian, Mariano was brought out of his musings by a small argument. While Trumpkin was almost falling over himself with the excitement that Mirabel had come, he didn't think the other four were much help, given they didn't look like the warriors of legend, and were just children. "Prithee, if thou rememberest the tales of the Battle of Verona, and who fought, then surely thou knowest the ages of the great kings and queens were during it, and how they were crowned shortly thereafter. We remember, even though we were mere 5 years old, because of those weeks were some of the best memories of our life," said Mirabel.
"But your majesties clearly come straight from a battle long in the past,"
said Trumpkin. "Have we? How dost thou know not if this is our usual attire? Come now, dear dwarf, it is by no stretch of the imagination that we have come. Then how is it hard to believe our dear brothers and sisters have come as they were in the most prominent battle of Narnia's past?" said Mirabel, slipping into the royal we. She had surprised even herself with how effortlessly she had slipped back into the formal way of speaking. Maybe the Narnian air had more surprises for her. Little Antonio had followed his Uncle Peter into the treasure room to help him look for armour and weapons for the dwarf, but had spotted something glittering on one of the shelves. "Uncle Peter, what is that?" asked Antonio, pointing at the golden tiara that looked like butterflies made of fire and was covered in garnets and yellow diamonds.
"That's Mirabel's battle crown. It would catch the rising sun every morning and make her shine with the sun behind her like she was a part of it,"
said Peter. "If there's a war that Narnia needs help fighting, won't she need her tiara?" asked Antonio.
"I suppose she might. Here, how about you go take it to her?"
said Peter, handing the little guy the tiara. Peter watched fondly as Antonio bolted up the stairs with the jewellery in hand. Mariano had also followed the two into the treasure room to help look.
"Fire and butterflies seem to be common symbols attributed to Mirabel,"
said Mariano, glad to be able to talk with the teenager without translations.
"The fire thing came from the stories about the Battle of Verona, the rising sun behind her, and the griffins seeing her dance on the hill playing her lyre, moving like flames and spurring their hoops. The butterflies were her own thing that she loved, and would sew them into her dresses. both kind of melded together, and some called her the fire of change and hope. Some even thought she was part of the deep magic of ancient Narnia, said Peter. Do you think so? In Encanto, the magic of the Madrigal's candle is everywhere, but it seems to bend and even bow to the magic around Mirabel. No one knew why she was so different, but everything about her, well, now I know it's Narnian in origin, said Mariano. She seemed to know Aslan the moment she saw him, and she had no fear even though she was 5 and had been scared of the beavers. But she ran to Aslan as if she had either seen him before or recognized him from her world, said Peter. Perhaps there are some mysteries that will never be solved, said Mariano. The two found what they were looking for and ascended the stairs to find Mirabel sitting where her throne used to be, with her tiara on her head, and Antonio babbling to Edmund about a dream he had had last night. Mirabel watched the 4 children prove their identities to the dwarf, before he realized he still didn't have much of the story. He didn't know how Mirabel first came here, why magic seemed to want him and Antonio here this time, and he had absolutely no idea how they were going to get back. Something in his gut told him that Mirabel would be unconcerned with the last part. Mirabel was smoking fish and packing apples for the journey, as well as collecting any herbs that could be of use, and ensuring they had plenty of water. She had gone quiet a few hours ago, seemingly deep in thought, and now the other 4 and the dwarf were discussing how best to leave the island. Mirabel put out the fire and wrapped the smoked and dried fish in leaves from an overgrown grapevine she had found. She seemed to remember something and walked over to Antonio. Tonito, there is something very important we need to talk about before we leave the island, said Mirabel seriously. What, Mama? Asked Antonio. I realize your gift might make you averse to eating meat, but we do not know how long we will be here, and cannot guarantee there will always be edible plants on the journey. Even more so, I can't guarantee that the plants are edible will contain enough protein. You need to remember that animals hunt and eat other animals, and do so to survive, and that humans are, at their core, predators. If we have to kill an animal, we will, and you must accept that. We will be humane about hunting, but I do not know if you will be able to understand Narnian animals, at least the ones who have forgotten how to speak, said Mirabel. Can I at least try to talk to them before you kill them? Maybe if they understand why, then they won't be so scared, asked Antonio. We'll see, but sometimes there won't be that chance, said Mirabel. Mirabel, are you sure you're only 15? Because that was a very adult way of rationalizing, said Mariano. No, Mariano. I'm 30. My 15 years in Narnia prior to this never left me. Physically, I'm 15, but mentally, I'm the age I should have been if I'd spent all 25 years of my life in Narnia. I wasn't a little 5-year-old playing with a bow and arrow. I was 20 and trapped back in the body of my younger self, with all the skills of a princess who had been in wars, gotten drunk at parties, made decisions for her kingdom, and, above all, had a better education than anyone else in the village, said Mirabel. Mariano looked at her, and she could see the question in his eyes. My answer is still no. No matter where you look at it from, there is still a 7 or 8 year age gap between us. That is just wrong from any way you look at it, said Mirabel. I understand, said Mariano. He watched her continue preparations for their journey. Hey, Mariano, I've seen that look before. Care to talk? Asked Edmund. When we return to Encanto, Mirabel's grandmother and my mother are going to try to have Mira and I get together. I have been good friends with her for a while, and while I understand and accept her reasons for rejecting me, I can't help feeling like the decision might be taken out of her hands by scheming older women. I do care about her a lot, and I would be very happy if one day she was physically much older, we became more than friends. But if the decision is taken away, would she be happy with me? I wanted to give her the option before our elders take it from her hands. But I'm worried, said Mariano. Mirabel killed the last person trying to force themselves or someone else onto her. You're her best friend. So it wouldn't be you at the end of her blade, should her grandmother try something that idiotic. I think we're all dealing with 3 different Mirabels. Our fun-loving little sister that we love and adore, the battle Mirabel who seems to have reigned for 10 years in Encanto, and a new Mirabel whom only Aslan will truly know, said Edmund. Who did she kill? Asked Mariano. A pompous twat who thought the Princess of Narnia was his right to claim because she was not a queen, and their marriage would strengthen ties between Narnia and the Lost Islands. Totally forgetting that we own the Lost Islands, and if Mirabel hadn't gutted him, then Peter would have had him executed, said Edmund. I bet a lot of people steered clear of offering marriage to her after that, said Mariano. No, but they were very respectful about it, and took rejection gracefully, said Edmund. What should I do? Asked Mariano. Have her back. If the eldest tries something stupid, put your foot down and stand behind her as she holds her blade at their throat. But it's probably for the best that Mira said no. Susan and Peter are very protective of our little sister, and Susan is a better shot with a bow and Peter has his sword back, said Edmund. Mariano shivered at the thought. It was going to be strange being around people who would protect Mirabel at any cost. Even Louisa was a giant teddy bear who was too much like both of her parents. Mariano gladly helped row as he had a fair bit more strength than Edmund. Mirabel had Antonio in her lap and was staring into space. Something on your mind, little sis? Asked Susan. A lot of things and nothing at the same time, sighed Mirabel. Antonio had fallen asleep long before they reached the shore, and the stars were beginning to come out. Lou, can you watch Antonio? I need a walk to clear my head and catch my bearings. Maybe get us something to eat other than fish and apples, said Mirabel. Of course, said Lucy, taking the little boy into her arms. Mirabel sighed as she walked. Lucy had always had a fondness for the dryads and the other fae of the forest, but Mirabel had found herself drawn to the salamanders and butterflies. She looked at the familiar stars of Narnia, and just stood there, letting the Narnian summer air engulf her. She could feel the magic around her, hear the snoring of the trees in their slumber, waiting to be woken. Mirabel knew Lucy had trouble falling asleep, and could even hear her get up and go for a walk, but as much as Mirabel wished to follow her, Antonio was sleeping, cuddled up next to Mira, and wrapped in her cloak, rendering the princess immobile. Mirabel stayed relatively silent as everyone debated which way to go, despite Trumpkin asking her for her opinion. Alas, my friend, these woods on their magic are after my knowledge. This forest is new, and I cannot focus my mind on such the moment, said Mirabel. Antonio heard a snarl from behind them. Food, growled the voice. The little boy turned to see a large grey bear. Don't eat us, pleaded Antonio. The bear stopped. You speak? Asked the bear. I can talk to animals, he said proudly. All food talks, growled the bear, preparing to attack again, before it got an arrow to its eye from Mirabel. Antonio looked indignant. Whose food now? He taunted the corpse of the predator. Mirabel sighed and got to work skinning the bear after Susan and Lucy took Antonio far enough away to not see the messy work of the 5 others. Your Majesty thinks quickly. I had not heard of the beast until your child began to speak to it, said Trumpkin. Lucy's shout about Aslan had Mirabel turning around. She could see the great lion as well. She didn't spare another thought and shoved the bundles of food into Mariano's arms before grabbing Antonio and running off to where Lucy had pointed. She had Antonio on her shoulders as she ran after the lion. She had thought Lucy may be behind her, but was desperate to see Aslan again. Antonio wanted to see the real version of the painting he had been staring at his whole life, and he trusted his Mama and Aunt Lucy. Hadn't we better follow her? Asked Mariano. Her Majesty will return once she sees there was nothing. The little one could even ask a squirrel for directions, said Trumpkin. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed this one. I like that Edmund is talking with Mariano and Peter as well. I like that the boys are developing a friendship, and the very real debates that they're having.
And I like that Mirabel reminds Antonio that humans are predators. That's always been a bit of a debate for me. What if people that understood animals, would they eat them? Some would, some wouldn't, I believe, but I like that idea. Like people say, it's a fish eat fish world or a dog eat dog world. The same thing, we're still predators. And as a species, technically we're omnivores. We can get nutrients from plants, and I firmly respect and, support people who do that, but I couldn't take meat out of my diet personally. I just love fried bacon too much, what can I say? Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe, and hit that bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.